Hey y'all, Bill Quirk with the Defensive Training Group and Shoot GTR, here to do the fourth installment of this new series we've been working on, where we answer the most commonly asked questions we get in the shop, or frequently asked questions that we get in the shop. So today we're going to be talking about red dots. Do I need one? Red dots are an expanding technology within particularly the handgun market right now. They've been on carbines and even shotguns for quite a while now, but you're really seeing them explode on the handgun side. They've been used for competition purposes for several decades, and even as defensive tools, they're not new. I've started using a red dot equipped handgun as a duty gun back in 2007, 2008, and continued all the way into the end of my first career in law enforcement. Red dots are technology. They're just a sight. They're different than your iron sights, but they're just a sight. They give you advantages. There are some disadvantages. Increasingly, pistols that are coming out of from the manufacturers are pre-cut to accommodate a red dot. Doesn't mean you have to put a red dot on there, but they are pre-cut, and they'll use some kind of adapter plate to mount the red dot onto the slide of the pistol. You can still get some pistols from some manufacturers that are not pre-cut. Glock, for example, makes their regular line that are not pre-cut, and then they have the MOS line, modular optic system, that are pre-cut for red dots. But other guns like the Walther PDP series, they only come pre-cut from the factory. So I've heard for a couple of years now that 2 more years, 3 more years, 5 more years, all pistols from the factory are going to be optics ready. Who knows if that's going to be the case, but certainly it's becoming more and more common. So what are the pros and cons of a red dot? Why might you want one? So the cons first. They do add some expense to the purchase. They add some bulk to the gun, and there is, of course, a learning curve involved with the red dot. Even though it's just a sighting system, there is a learning curve because there are some important differences between using your iron sights. What are the pros? The pros are, first of all, when you're using iron sights, as most of you know that have been shooting for a while, you have your target, your front sight, and your rear sight. You focus on your target, you bring the weapon up. As the weapon interrupts your focal plane, you're going to bring your focus back to your front sight, and you're going to maintain front sight focus while you're shooting, keeping that front sight aligned in the rear notch and superimposed on the target. So that's a lot we have to manage. We can do it. We've been doing it for years, don't get me wrong, but it is a lot to manage. We have 3 things: target, front sight, and rear sight. In the red dot, the case of the red dot, you have the target and your red dot, and you're going to maintain focus on your target, not on the dot, on the target, and you're going to superimpose that dot where you want the round to go. So it simplifies what you have to do. Additionally, going along that same line, as we get older and the interior lens of our eyes become less flexible, it may be difficult for us to bring our focus back to the front sight, back out to the target, back to the front sight. Moving back and forth, a lot of eye fatigue starts to set in. And also, as our lenses start to become less flexible and our ability to focus at arm's length on that front sight is degraded, using iron sights may be more problematic for us as we get up in years, as I am these days. So if your vision is, if you're finding yourself unable to focus clearly on your front sight at arm's length, a red dot might be something to consider because, as I said, your focus is on the target and you're just superimposing that dot. So you're not having to shift back and forth, and you're not having to focus at arm's length. Another advantage of the red dot is when we talk about the fundamentals of shooting, I will tell you that your front sight's going to move. The dot's going to move a lot too, and you're going to see the dot move more because it's a single point in space than you do your front sight. It's actually moving the same in both cases, but we just perceive the dot differently because it's a single point in space. Once you get over that initial, oh my God, this thing is going crazy, no more caffeine for me. Once you get over that, you will get a lot more usable feedback from the dot movement than you can from your irons. And so ultimately, using a dot will help you with grip and trigger press, which are the 2 most important fundamentals of shooting the handgun: stance, sights, grip, and trigger. Grip and trigger are your 2 most important fundamentals. And the dot, because we perceive it differently, we can derive more feedback, more usable feedback that will help us improve those things, which ultimately will make us a better shooter. And I personally have experienced, and I know lots of people that have experienced, they shoot a red dot for a year, they go back to iron sights, and they can shoot the iron sights better. Because it's not the sights, it's the fact that they learn more about the grip and the trigger press. So that's another advantage. Concerns people have sometimes with the dots are durability, battery life, things of that nature. The durability, there are 3 brands in particular that I recommend as being, I call it duty grade, but ready for real world type of situations. And I'm sure there are other ones, but in my experience, with red dot classes, with carrying these things, with seeing hundreds and hundreds of students and getting their feedback, the 3 brands are going to be Holosun, Trijicon, and Aimpoint. There are lots of other ones out there, and I'm not saying they're not good, but your mileage may vary. In my experience, your mileage may vary. A lot of them are more hobby grade, not duty grade. So those are the 3 that I recommend. How the dot gets mounted on your weapon is going to be critical. Whether it's a direct mill, so if you have a non-optics ready slide, you can have a machinist mill out a pocket and then tap screws, and we're going to mount that optic directly onto the slide. Whether it's that or whether you're using some sort of pre-cut modular system like the Glock MOS or the Walther PDP where you're using an adapter plate. In either case, the fit of the optic to the slide is going to be critical for longevity, for durability, to maintain zero and repeatability if you have to put the optic, take it off and put it back on. So how we mount it, degreasing the screws correctly, torquing the screws correctly, adding the right amount of Loctite, just pour it in there. We're going to add just a little bit just to give those screws some bite and make sure they're clean, make sure they're degreased, make sure they're torqued correctly and all that stuff. That's going to be critical to giving you a good result that will last you a long time. I've got red dots that have gone through thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds with the dot surviving, no loss of zero or anything, and the dot never loosens up or shifts or anything like that. If there's any movement in that mounting structure, that can quickly kill a red dot. Certainly it'll affect your zero and the subsequent accuracy. I killed a very high quality Aimpoint optic because there was a defect in the plate system that I wasn't aware of, and it got worse as I was shooting, and I was shooting a class, and within 1,500 rounds killed the optic completely. It battered itself to death because of that slides going back and forth. Tremendous amount of energy is transferred into the optic, the G-forces, and you can quickly kill it. So mounting it is hypercritical. We got to make sure it's done correctly. If you have any questions about that, we can help you with that. I'll assist you with that and making sure that it's mounted correctly. Battery life. Battery life is another thing that we talk about. And people worry, well, my iron sights are never going to fail. They're never going to run out of batteries, but this optic might. The good brands, Holosun, Trijicon, Aimpoint, the current crop of optics that they offer, those battery lives are measured in years. So I change my battery once a year, every October 1st, and I don't have to worry about it. But I've had them on some of my loaner guns where I wasn't as diligent about it, and they still last for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending on where I've got the optic set as far as the intensity. I'm a big believer in the red dot. I still want to have my backup iron sights on the gun. 1 is none, 2 is 1. I like the redundancy. I had a gun that I had custom built several years ago that didn't have a provision for backups, and I sold it pretty quickly because I just didn't like not having them. It's not that I don't trust the optic, I just like to hedge my bets. I have had optics come off in the middle of a course of fire. I have had optics die. I have had iron sights break in the middle of a course of fire. So any of these things can potentially fail on you. That's just life, okay? It's not a defect of the object necessarily or the concept, it's just life. So I want to set myself up for success and have a redundant system in place if I can do that. So one of the things that you'll see is we talk about Cowitness, and that can be very confusing because people say, well, what exactly does that mean? First of all, understand that if you have iron sights and a red dot, they're 2 independent sighting systems. You're not using them together. They are completely independent sighting systems. They may be set up so that they are zeroed at the same point. Your point of aim, point of impact is the same for both sets, but you don't have to put the dot on top of your front sight and then line the front sight up with the rear sight. That would defeat the purpose of having the red dot. So they're 2 independent sighting systems. You can set your backup irons up so that they are, if you hear the term absolute co-witness, when you look through the window of your optic, the ocular window of the optic, your sights will line up at about midpoint in that window, top to bottom, and your dot should be sitting right on top of your front sight. You'll see lower third co-witness, and so those irons are going to be lower so that they're in the lower third of the window. When you bring the gun up, ordinarily the dot is floating around somewhere in the top half of the window, and then if you hunker down a little bit, it'll drop it so it's lined up in that lower third of the window, lined up with your lower third co-witness sights. And what we're doing now is a low witness. CH Precision Weapon Systems coined that term, a low witness or a 1/5 witness. And the irons are even lower so that they're just barely visible above the deck of the optic, so that you really have to drop down in order to see them. But they're there so that you can use them if you need them. Where this came from is as optics technology among the better brands has improved and the durability and longevity have really gotten very, very good, our need, the perceived need for those backup irons has gone down a little bit. We're less worried about the optics failing, so we're less worried about having those backup irons. So we've dropped them a little bit so that they're there if we need them, but they're also not occluding any more of the window than is absolutely necessary so that we can maximize the effectiveness of the dot, which is why we have it. So these are all things for you to think about. The short answer is yes, I think the red dot is definitely worth the squeeze. There are other topics that we haven't gotten into: closed emitter, open emitter, reticle type, circle dot, just a dot, whatever the case may be, red versus green, all those different things. Those are other considerations, and if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to the shop, put us a comment below, reach out to me, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. So if you found the video helpful, please give us a like below, give us a comment if you have anything you want to say. Get out there and train, keep training, and you all be safe.